have to be made up of stuff that looks like the game. So Blair, I think kind of like gone are the days of drills, right? The 4 blue classic drill where you pass it here, you pass it there, and you come down with no pressure and just take a open shot on the goalie. I guess those are still kind of around in warm-ups, but yeah, drills are kind of dying out, it seems. Every single coach there was talking about small area games. And I think that kind of relates across all sports, not just hockey. Ross, I value your opinions for setting up practice plans and layouts because you've coached sports. So yeah, give me your thoughts there, guys.
It's on you, Blair.
Oh. As far as hockey goes, yeah, I mean, quick example, I can remember spending 30 minutes doing one-on-one, one-on-O's, one-on-ones, two-on-ones, and, next thing you know, practice is half over. So I'm glad those days are gone because that was a gigantic waste of time.
Yeah.
And, they talk about, hey, you got to have great shots and warm up too. Never happens. So, it's a breath of fresh air to hear that. The most fun I ever had was playing small ice games because, it was still getting tons of shots, but it's more game, realistic. And I can remember some of the best practice coaches I had where, we had a few of those drills to start practice, but then, we're doing, what we called battle drills on Wednesdays where the nets are moved close together.
Yes.
We've got a rope closing everything in. So the pucks, we're not losing as many pucks, but then it's like, 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 1-on-1, guys battling it out. And, you're fighting for the puck in a close area. And it's hard for the goalies. That was my position where we have to react quickly. Like that is way more realistic. We got way more out of that than we ever did any of the other drills where it was just skate down the ice, shoot the puck.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Ross?
Well, I was going to say I've always found it wild from coaching lacrosse, which is kind of like hockey, but obviously not at the same time, but similar concepts. But just from the fact of, like Blair was just saying, whether it's the one guy on the goal or one-on-ones to goal, I mean, the goalie is getting 100 shots in a very short period of time, and it's just getting absolutely dogged. And then, meanwhile, the offensive guys might have got, 10 shots, and they got a couple minutes between shots, and they're feeling great, and they're loving it. Meanwhile, the goalie is sitting in red for 30 minutes straight, and they can't think straight, and this and that. And that's a perfect situation of trying to make it like not trying to make it like a game, where you should make it like a game, where there is a little bit, you're going to have a bit more time to set up and react and think clearly. Because, I mean, when you're sitting in the red and you're taking that many shots, you're obviously not going to think that clearly. You're not going to make as many saves. You're not going to make the right decisions. And now we're just making bad calls and making saves. When it comes to the practice layout and all that stuff, I mean, like we all know, and like we've talked about, and I think that's the biggest thing we can impact when it comes to coaches is obviously we're starting with the warm up, and you're starting with skill development and your speed work at the beginning. And then, from there, like you guys have both said, I mean, we're doing small sided games and what have you. I know for us, and when I was coaching lacrosse and coaching wrestling, the two biggest things we did, I'll speak for lacrosse, is we started, the first 15 minutes were just speed work basically. And whether it was, say, shots on goal or what have you, but it was full speed sets. But there may not have been a goalie in the goal. I mean, it was all skill work and fast-paced stuff. And then when it came, like for wrestling, and wrestling is a different beast. But, I've always thought that wrestling coaches naturally prepare and write their practices probably better than any other sport coach, I think, just because of the way that you have to teach the sport, and that you're really having to teach this library of moves and situations, because nothing is ever really planned, and I got to react all the time. So it's really more of teaching this big library of stuff. And so with wrestling, you're kind of naturally starting with, say, skill acquisition first. Then you're starting with kind of tying some moves together. Then we're going live for short bits. Then we're going full live. Like, there's just ways that it builds in, which you can apply the same to hockey or any other sport. But I have always thought that wrestling does an exceptional job of that compared to most sports.
That's a
good point. I'd agree with that. Anything else to add to that, Blair?
Oh, I was just going to say, talking about the battle days and the small area games, Ross brought up a great point that it just clicked and reminded me, full ice drills, I never really got that tired, sometimes, but not usually. And then when we would do the small area games, there'd be a lot of players standing around, and I would be dead after 10 or 15 minutes. Because I was getting shot after shot, and I would be in the red. We didn't have the heart rate monitors at that point, but I could tell you right now I was in the red, and my legs were burning, and I was looking for a sub if I could get one. So, obviously it's not something that you can do all the time. It's something that you have to use and use wisely. And that's why, that would be a Wednesday thing, because then come Friday game night, I'm rested again. Thursday's a little bit easier. We're doing power play, penalty kill, a little bit more, technical stuff to ease into the weekend. But I thought that was a good point, Ross. And having seen some of wrestling's practices, I would say that they are dialed in, and being able to, and it might not be every wrestling coach, but just the ones we've seen, but being able to go from specific parts of the skills and bringing it into that full, movement and the full, I guess, like match, wrestling, movements, whatever you want to call it. I'm not the wrestling guru, but, going from specific to, actually wrestling is, probably a smart way to do it.
Well,
and I think
our volleyball coach at our high school, he's the only guy that has asked me about practice planning and laying out his practices. And he's also a pretty good coach, and he runs a pretty good organization. But I was asking him, and we were just talking about it, and he naturally already lays out his practices in essentially high, medium, low, and goes in blocks of time of, all right, this block is a low period, a low period for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Then we've got a medium intensity period. Then we've got a high intensity period for, 5, 10, whatever, however many minutes it is. But he just cycles through for X number of time, depending on what the drills are. And that was, and I know Chris, I think we had talked about it at one point when I went to one of the high school family days, and the coach was talking about research from the jump. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a little jump thing that goes on your waistband, and it might just be called jump or vert. And the most impactful jump or thing that a volleyball player does is a jump serve. And it's because when they're doing a jump serve, they're throwing the ball up, and then they're looking up at the ball to hit, and then they're landing without looking down, preparing to land. And so they're not absorbing that jump as well as they do versus, all right, I'm going to go spike the ball, and they're kind of prepping to land. So a jump serve is the most impactful thing that a volleyball player does. Well, normally with most coaches, when they are trying to do a low, easy period, they're doing jump serves, or they're just serving, because that doesn't seem like a stressful thing or an impactful thing, because it's just serves. I'm not digging the ball. I'm not doing a bunch of jumps. I'm just sitting back here and I'm serving. Where if you get a bunch of girls and they just did 30, 40 jump serves. That's super, super stressful. And that was something that I had mentioned to our coach, and he was like, man, that actually makes a lot of sense. And they didn't really do a bunch of that on their high blocks, but he was like, okay, I'll think about it as far as when I'm setting stuff up. But yeah, long story short, he naturally had done that in his planning. So there really wasn't any fixing, but he was trying to figure out a way to get better. And I was like, no, man, that's pretty good. I've watched your practices and they look pretty solid. So let's keep trucking.
Yeah, that's pretty high level.